years ago. Ooh,
Sorry.
Yeah, so I started on Patreon in 2014, and initially the reason behind that was because I had just graduated and was like moving to London and was like basically trying to make YouTube a full-time thing, and so I was just like, oh, I can start a Patreon and that can like be part of the thing that helps me along this route. But over the last 7 years, it's kind of like taken on many different forms. Those first few years, I definitely overextended myself. So I kind of like went in and like had all of these different tiers and like all of these like ridiculous perks and stuff, and it just got to the point where like it burnt me out. And so I always kind of say to people, at least, like, this isn't a hard and fast rule, but it's just like a recommendation, which is pick perks for your tiers, like rewards or whatever you want to call them, that no matter how many people are signed up for that, your workload doesn't increase. So if you're having to do something individually for every single person that signed up for it, like think about the workload that's involved in that. And there is a feature in Patreon where you can cap the tier. You can be like, only 10 people can be signed up for this. So I would recommend using that if it's going to be something that for every single person that is signed up, you have to then like do the work again. So now I make sure that all of my tiers are essentially like, I just have to do the work once, and it doesn't matter how many people are signed up for it. And another thing that has changed over the years with my Patreon is actually like giving it a name and really going hard on the like, this is a community. So it has like its own branding, it has its own identity. The people who are part of my Patreon are members of the common room. Whenever I do like special offers on Patreon, which is a really useful tool in terms of like growth, the things that I've sent out for them kind of like feel like community merch. So we've had like stickers and pins and a bookmark. So it's kind of all about that kind of like community building. And then I also use like Patreon's Discord integration. So we have like a private Discord server for just the common room. I just see someone in the chat saying, do you funnel Patreon members into your newsletter? So I kind of do it the other way around, because I think of Patreon as like, my funnel basically goes like YouTube, and then like social media, and then like newsletter, and then Patreon is like the final stop. I use Discord to manage the community. That's kind of like where we chat most of the time. So I've got more people who are subscribed to my newsletter because that's free than subscribe to my Patreon. And so often I'm trying to upsell my newsletter subscribers to join my Patreon. Yeah.
And have you thought about developing any other products or anything else beyond the Patreon? So as you said, you started that 7 years ago. So have you had any other thoughts over the last 7 years about how you could monetize your content?
I'm always thinking about stuff. Like at the moment, I'm kind of like thinking about live streaming. I think I mentioned this last time, that platform Wrinkle, which people can kind of like ask you questions and like pay to ask you a question, and they get like a personalized response from. So kind of like, I'm just always just like always looking at new things, but then also like there's a like, oh, this is working for me, so I'm going to focus on this. So definitely like one of my big focus at the moment is Patreon, and then also like affiliates is a big one for me as well, especially like in the niche that I'm in with like sex education. It tends to be like sex toy affiliate links is like a big one for me, especially during the pandemic. There were some Wrinkle questions. So I know the founder of Wrinkle. The founder of Wrinkle is a friend of mine, and I kind of, over the years of him developing it, he's like reached out to me many times being like, can I have your insight? And I'm like, yes, you can, for free, but when Wrinkle becomes a thing, you better sponsor me. And he did. So
okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Cool.
How do you redirect your audience to Wrinkle? Yeah, so I now have wrinkle in all my video descriptions. Then, like I said, I did like a sponsored video with them, so I talked about that. But it's still early stages, so I'm kind of just like, I'm feeling it out. I only ever really mention it in kind of like maybe situations like this, or in a situation where like somebody reaches out and goes, oh, can I ask you some questions? And I'm like, I literally do not have the capacity, like go through wrinkle. That's kind of, yeah, kind of how I'm using it at the moment.
Cool. Ryan, you've had your hand up. Let's go to you.
Hey, Hannah.
Hi.
A few days ago, your calendar blocking video showed up on my homepage, and it took me a while to realize that that was a second channel.
Yeah.
So I was wondering kind of a couple things about that, like why did you decide to do another channel? Has it been hard to keep up with that? Has that been good or bad? That whole side of it.
Cool. Yeah, thank you. So for context, I started that second channel, which is More Hannah, towards the end of 2019. So like 7 years into making, no, 8 years into making videos. So that channel is like very new, relatively. And the reason, so I'd always kind of like wanted to have a second channel, and my desire for that was because I felt like my main channel, which basically had like all of the sex and relationship stuff, but then occasionally would have like a travel vlog, or I would be talking about books, or I'd make a video about fashion, or like it just was chaos. In terms of like, someone would look at that channel and just go, what does this person make videos about? Like, what is going on here? And I also got really frustrated because I knew that like the sex and relationships videos would always do better than some of the other videos. And that would always be a bummer, because I'd just be like, oh, I know that less people are interested in this, but I still want to make them. And it would just like mess with analytics and stuff, and my just general like enthusiasm for things. But the reason why I never like had made a second channel before was just because I did not have the capacity to do it. It was like, having a second channel is double the work. Like there's nothing that is the state of it. And so basically end of 2019 was when I felt like I was in a really good rhythm with my editor and with my assistant. We had a really good system going, a really great process. And I basically said to them, I was like, hey, I think now is the time. What do you think? And so we kind of planned it, and we thought about it, and, you know, all together kind of like, okay, how are we going to make this work so it's sustainable? And it's now been almost 2 years. So we've made it sustainable, but I wouldn't have been able to do it before. So I'm glad I didn't force it before, even though I really wanted to.
But you're glad you've done it now, I guess.
Yeah. It not just helps with like, oh, people will go to one channel and then it's like, oh, this is about sex. Like, it's so clear. And then the other one is like, oh, this is like a lifestyle channel. But also for me, when I'm like coming up with ideas for videos and stuff, it just feels so much more freeing and like easy to know where stuff goes. And then also the thing with the second channel, with the More Hannah channel, I've got like, I do not care about it growing. I do not care about the analytics on it. Like, I wish I could have that same kind of like, that I do about the sex and relationships one, but it feels great just to be like, oh, I just want to make this video, and who cares if it performs badly? like it's actually quite a nice feeling.
Shervin.
Hello. I would, whoa, spotlight. I would love to get your feedback on my channel page, the channel art, kind of like the vibe, the aesthetic, and like what do you get out of it from like initial impression, without really explaining much.
Okay. My first impression from the photo is that you're a funny guy. Like, it feels comedic, like it feels like friendly, approachable, like, yeah, that feels nice. And then the optimize your health seems that makes sense to me, but I'm like, I don't see the photo and that tagline together, unless like the photo is just like, we're optimizing your health, and this is the guy that's doing it, and he has a very funny approach to it, and it's a very approachable approach. Wow. But yeah, and then the buildings make less sense, but I don't know if that's like important. Yeah, I don't know if you want your imagery to reflect more of your niche. I think the imagery works really, really well to reflect your personality, which I think is really good to have. But yeah, does that help? There's some people in the chat also saying some stuff as well. Yeah, love the vibe, comedic vibe. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I'm trying to go for like a somewhat sophisticated, but also comedic, and just teaching people different ways they can kind of improve their health and optimize it for like just living a healthier lifestyle.
And I think the quality of the photo, that it's a really high quality photo, that gives the sophisticated vibe. And then like your face and gesture in it gives off the like fun guy vibe.
And then one last one is, any tips for outsourcing script writing? I know we talked about outsourcing editing, but I don't know if this is a question you can answer.
So this isn't something that I've done. I have dabbled in outsourcing research. So yeah, I don't know. Like so with outsourcing script writing, there's one other person who I know who has done that. And she had a very like long-term relationship with the person who was her script writer. And also they were like really close friends as well. So there was like this element of like really understanding their style, really understanding like how they talk and their ability to deliver any jokes and like how things would sound coming out of their mouth. Because there are just some things that if I see written down, I'm like, oh my God, I would never say that. Like that just does not feel natural to me. So it would be really about like, if you want a script writer, it has to be someone that you're like developing a really long-term relationship with, especially with like going off your photo and it being like very like personality driven as well. If it was just going to be a like, I am just the host and you don't really get to know me, then you could be a bit more flexible with like working with multiple script writers, because you just like, here's the whatever it is. But like, I think, yeah, developing like a really close relationship with someone who really gets you, and there would be a lot of work up front of like feedback and stuff before you kind of get into a flow of things.
Well, maybe start with a researcher first. Awesome, thanks.
I found with a researcher, it saves a lot of time. And then they kind of like they've like sent me a doc with like all of the breakdown of all of the info in it. And then I use that to write a script. And then I can write it in my voice, and I can also like structure it in a way that like makes sense for my brain. And if I'm structuring something in a way that makes sense for my brain, it's going to be easier for me to communicate. Yeah.
Cool. Peter.
Hi. I just wanted to pick your brain in regards to like outsourcing editing, if that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm kind of new to YouTube, but I'm still serious about it. And as Ali has said, like one of the biggest bottlenecks is editing, because it takes a long time. And in a few months, I'm going to be starting my master's degree. So I don't want the editing and everything else to take, to affect my master's degree, degree. So I've been wondering about just your general experience of outsourcing editing, especially in regards to payment. So do you pay them per hour, per project? Considering my channel is in like Netflix style editing, whatever is quite basic, how much would you pay them based on that? So just generally any advice for that, really?
Yeah, so in terms of payment, I do per video. And then if it's a sponsored video, I pay more, because I've got a bigger budget for the video, and also there tends to be one. So like if it's not a sponsored video, then I just do one round of feedback. But if it's a sponsored video, then I do my round of feedback. We send that one to the brand, and then the brand also has a round of feedback. So there is more work as well. And and then in terms of finding an editor, because I've been doing this, I was doing this for years before I even went looking for one, it just kind of like was people that I knew and like in the community that I was around, and just being like, who's your editor? Who's your editor? The first time I hired someone though, actually, I did just like put a call out and was just like, I'm looking for someone to do this, and went through applications. I would recommend, if you're going to go through like somewhere like Fiverr or Upwork,
that's the idea.
Then send them just like a bit of footage and see what they do with it, because there's like the actual skill of editing, of like knowing how to use the software, but then there's the like creative skill of like building the story and like because you can tell jokes in editing, you can like completely change the tone of something in editing, and you want to make sure that they kind of like have a similar sense of humor to you, or like or understand like how YouTube editing works as well. Like there's a lot of things to consider. There's a lot of things that can be trained as well. And kind of similar to what I said to Shervin, at the beginning it will feel like it's not saving you any time because of the hiring process and the training process.
Well,
so it is like it's a lot of upfront time that you have to invest.
But it pays dividends hopefully later on. And how come you do per project or per video and not per hour in regards to pay?
So it's just easier that way. That's the way that my editor charges. However, and also most of my videos, there'll be a similar amount of footage and it's a similar amount of work. Occasionally a really big project, then I'll just be upfront about that, and we'll do like 1.5 times the usual rate or something. But we just discuss that as we go.
Sure. So when you pay them per project, is that including, getting feedback and then saying, oh, I like this, everything that encompasses that video essentially? Yeah. So for me, what that includes in my editor is feedback from myself. So like one round of main edits, and then like if there's like 1 or 2 things that need tweaking after that, then that's also fine. And then also my editor makes the thumbnail, and my editor like exports a few GIFs from the videos, and like an IG story size promo thing. And that's kind of like all included. Sure. Okay. Sure. Cheers. Thank you very much.
No worries.
Taz.
Hey Hannah, how are you?
Hey, good. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm not too bad, thank you. I was actually going to ask similar question that's been asked really about the editing process, but I think what I'm interested to know is, like, you have a package agreement set up with your editor. How did the dynamics of the relationship change from when you found your editor on day one, and the payment structure? Was there an understanding that as I grow, you get paid more per video, or was it you get what I mean? Like for me personally, I'd like to establish a dynamic where it's like, I'm looking for someone for 2 years, you're going to be a part of the team, we're going to grow together. As I get better, or as the channel gets bigger, you get paid more. And that way, that kind of incentivizes them to not just, this is just something they're rushing off. So I'm just curious, how did you go about it? Did you establish that dynamic, or is it just the highest price from the very get-go, and that's just what it is?
Yeah, so that's not something that I did because I was already established. So I can afford their prices. But that's a really great thing to do, I think, especially if you're working with someone who is a new editor as well, who is like actively like looking for work and actively wanting to get their name out there and like start, because there's so many people who want to edit for YouTubers, right? And so if you offer that, be like, look, this is all I can afford right now. However, like if we're making good progress and we make good videos and like the channel grows, then there's room for negotiation to like up it as the budget increases, essentially. So I think that it's really great to be transparent about that. I have a contract with my editor. It's one that she makes. You don't necessarily like need a whole contract, but contracts can be made very simple. But if you just have stuff in writing and emails as well, that
amazing. Cheers. Thank you.
works. Also, not a lawyer. Just disclaimer, not a lawyer.
Sorry.
Hey.
Hello. Just on what Taz was talking about just then, I sent out an email to a course tutor at the local art college who I know has a lot of students that do video editing. I was at their art show recently, and I sent them an email saying basically I'm looking for an editor and I'm open to negotiation once my channel is monetized, to sharing maybe 5% of the ad revenue. So yeah, I'm looking at going down that line, and maybe that's part of my question to you, Hannah, is like developing that brand, the look and feel of the videos. I know that Ali promotes keeping it to his style so that any old editor can come in and just copy that style. But I really like the idea of building that look and feel with an editor. I guess it could still then be copied by somebody else, but there's something that has a unique style. And I know that you've got quite a nice style to your videos, and your thumbnails have quite a unique look with the color sort of screen behind. I've asked you about those before. How much input do you have into that? Is that your editor that has a lot of the suggestions, or do you come in with a lot and she has to fit to your design?
I would say we have more of a collaborative approach on the branding side of things. The current style on my channel, though, I think was very much like led by her. She kind of like took what my previous editor had created and just kind of like built off that essentially. And like I've had editors before that as well whose style was slightly different, but I quite like it because it feels like my channel kind of evolves with them, and it's never so different that people are like, wait, what's going on? It's always like this natural progression because I'm involved in also like giving editing notes, and also like editing notes for thumbnails and ideas for thumbnails and stuff as well, because my creative input is in there too. It's also my preferences progressing, and like what I want is also just like changing over time, and it kind of like grows together with the different editors that I've had. So yeah, it would be a bit weird because I started working with an editor like 4 or 5 years ago or something, and it would be a bit weird if my videos looked the same now as they did 5 years ago. And that's obviously one, because it's a different editor, but also just because it's been 5 years and I'm also different, and my tastes and also YouTube as a platform is different. So there's like different kind of things that are trendy in terms of the look and feel of stuff.
But also, I mean, I'm curious to know how much you do before you send the footage to your editor as well. So it looks like you work off kind of like bullet pointy type scripts, and you speak for a while. Do you chop any of that up and sort of get a rough A cut together, or do you just literally send raw footage?
My editor just gets raw footage. However, I do know some editors who will just do like a rough cut and then they'll send it back, and then the YouTuber will finish it off. Right. Because doing the kind of like just cutting everything into a timeline is often a bit the thing that is just like quite tedious and boring and like takes loads of time. And then my friend who works this way, when she then receives this edit, she quite enjoys adding all of the embellishments, adding the jokes, like adding the different ways to kind of like heighten a punchline in a edit as well. So yeah, there's different ways that people do that.
And one final thing, you mentioned that she also produces a couple of GIFs for you. What's the purpose of those? What do you do with those?
So I use them on like Twitter and Instagram to like promote the video when it comes out. And then also I have a Giphy account. So my assistant basically like uploads all of these GIFs. Like if you literally go to, or if you just search my name in Giphy, there are so many GIFs that come up. And it's also quite funny because we tag the GIFs with like the emotion in it or like what's happening in it. Sometimes there are just people who have no idea who I am using these GIFs as like reaction GIFs and stuff. And it's just quite funny. Like,
yeah, cool. All right. I will we'll look that up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We should do that for Ali. I've never seen that before.
It's quite fun, and what happens is most of the time I don't know where my GIFs are being used or seen. However, every so often someone will like tag me on Twitter being like, "Oh, a Hannah Witten GIF," and then I'll see this context of like some random person just using a GIF of me for something, and I'm like, fun.
Yes, sorry, phrase there. One thing I was going to ask, we're obviously getting towards the end of the course. Yeah, we're obviously getting towards the end of the course now. And a lot of the time in previous two cohorts, one of the issues has been people sort of getting very scared at the end of the course. There's no one to sort of hold them accountable to make one video every week. So how do you keep up your consistency with publishing, and what motivates you to keep going? Especially when you started as well. Obviously now you've got an audience of 700,000 people, so it's slightly easier. Potentially that keeps you going. But when you were starting, what was the key to kind of publishing regularly and keeping that consistency?
I think at the beginning, and I hate this advice, at the beginning it was just like genuine enjoyment. It sounds like I'm genuinely not enjoying it anymore, but there are other things, like you said, other forces that are holding me accountable now. But it was just this pure like enthusiasm and excitement and like drive of just like, let's just do this. And yeah, also I'm the type of person who needs a deadline in order to actually do something. If I don't have a deadline, it's not going to get done. And when people ask me to do things, I ask for a deadline, because I'm like, it's not going to get done. If you don't tell me when to do it, it's not going to get done. And so I gave myself the deadline, like basically after I graduated uni, I was like, right, it's weekly videos. And I never publicized, oh, there's new videos every Tuesday. I never kind of did that. It was just like an internal deadline for myself, because I knew that if I did not have like this like Tuesday's video day, it just would not happen. And what happens with me often is that if I stop making videos, like if 1 week I fall off the train, then it's just so much harder to like get back on it, because then I'm like, oh, I missed last week, oh, it doesn't matter, I missed another week. And then the next thing you know, you missed 2 months of videos and you're like, sometimes I feel like for me now, what's happened is it's just like this like second nature thing of just like, I film videos on this day, and then I like, this is the day when I prep videos, and like I have like this body clock of like, oh, what point in the calendar is when the videos ideas have run out. Okay, like we need to sit down and like fill out the schedule.
So did you actually have days when you are dedicated to filming, dedicated to writing, or is that just when you feel like it?
It used to be when I felt like it. These days I film Tuesday mornings, but that only became a habit because during the pandemic, that would be the 1 day a week when my partner would go into work. So it was like, Tuesday is the only day in this week that I can film, because the rest of the time he is working from home with me. Obviously, now that I'm in this studio space, I can technically film whenever I want, although there's a fire alarm that goes off on Mondays at 10 a.m, so that's a no-go. But I actually quite like working within restraints. So even though I can technically film whenever I want here, I'm still just like, I just have it scheduled in my diary every Tuesday morning I'm filming. which works quite nicely for me. We'll see. I've obviously only just moved in here, so things might change. But for the moment, I'm like, why would I change this system that is working for me?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a question in the chat following up from the outsourcing talk. Do you video call and speak to your editor to discuss how things are going? And if so, how often?
I think
I guess how do you give feedback to someone? Do you use Frame or anything? Or
we just started using Frame. So I've only done that for like 2 videos and I quite like it. But previously we just had a page in Notion where I just bullet point all of my edit notes. In terms of video calls, or as it previously was, in-person meetings where we would go get lunch, I would say we maybe did those like twice a year. Or if there was going to be a big change, so like with the second channel, it was like, okay, planning session, you know. So yeah.
Cool.
They didn't.
Alice, you've got your hand up.
Yes. Hi. Can you hear me?
Hello. Yeah.
Hi. Okay. I was just curious. I wanted to ask you where you're getting all your content ideas. I mean, I know since you've narrowed down to one topic, how do you keep coming up with new variations, new things to talk about?
Good question. Sometimes I surprised myself, but I think the more you dive into a topic, the more you're like, oh my God, there's so much to talk about. Like, and even if you're like saying the same things, there's different ways of packaging it and there's different ways of doing it. And I find having series a really great tool for like idea generation. So I have a series called Pleasure Trove and I have a series called The Hormone Diaries, and I've had other series in the past as well. And it's kind of like that container again. It's like, okay, what's going to be the next episode of this show that we're producing? And I find that a nice way to figure out what to make videos about. Other times it's like just conversations I'm having with people, stuff that's happening in the media, books, also just stuff that's happening on YouTube. I often have tried to like take trends on YouTube and then kind of give them like a sex and relationships twist. Yeah. All sorts of things. Shower thoughts.
What's that? Sorry. Okay.
Shower thoughts.
Oh, shower thoughts. Okay. Do you use any of your social media to generate ideas or?
Yeah, like every so often, usually at the beginning of the year, maybe due one now, I'll just like post on Instagram with like the questions thing or something, being like, I'm doing a video planning session. What do you want to see? However, most of their suggestions are dog shit. But it's a case of like teasing out from them like, oh, there's something there, right? Like, you know, there's something there. So I will still go through all of them and I'll kind of like, and then there'll be ones where I'm like, okay, I'll write that one down. And then there'll be like 2 piles. They'll be like, okay, this is an interesting topic, and then there'll be another pile of like, ooh, actually, this is a great idea. And then the rest I'll just leave.
And when you said a moment ago that you'll repeat something, do you have any kind of schedule? Like you'll wait a certain number of like months or whatever before you reintroduce that topic or redo that topic or that video or that idea? Do you have anything like that?
No, I don't have anything strict about that. I'll just kind of get a feel for it of like, oh, we've not talked about this in a while, or like, no, we can't really do that video because we did that recently and it's a bit too soon. So yeah. Okay. No, nothing strict.
Okay. Thank you.
No worries.
Taz.
So you're a YouTube veteran now. So how long have you been doing it?
10 years.
10 years. So
yeah.
over the 10 years, what is been something that you didn't expect for it to have in terms of impact on your life? Like something that has come out of it that's had an unexpected impact on you?
It's all unexpected. I honestly, I don't know, because none of this is what I expected, because when I started in 2011, it was like just as a hobby. I had no intention of it being a job. So that's, I don't know. Is there something more specific?
Like let's say in the first few years to now to 10 years, what's changed significantly about the actual role which you play from the beginning to now, like 10 years in?
I would say I do a lot more admin now.
Right. And then you turn up for the film day.
Yeah. I think at the beginning it felt like it was just like purely a creative endeavor, and then it's kind of like you're a victim of your own success where like you get to a point where actually you're spending a lot of your time doing admin. And that's something that I'm always like, whenever I've spoken to like young people about YouTube, when they're like, oh, I want to be a YouTuber, I'm like, do you want to answer lots of emails? Like, enjoy.
I think someone's asked you, do you have you have an assistant and an editor, is that right?
Yeah. So and I have a manager as well, and so a lot of the brand deal stuff, a lot of the kind of like email heavy stuff kind of does get filtered through him, and there but even then I'm the bottleneck for so many things, so it's like I still have to be
still
on it. Yeah, but it's just, for me, it's just about like setting boundaries with myself and my email inbox.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
I was going to say the last thing for me is it's kind of related to the same kind of thing, because you've been in the game for so long, you've seen the game change, I imagine.
Yeah.
So how do you go about keeping your finger on the pulse?
I mean, I struggle because right now, if my finger was on the pulse, I'd be like doing shorts, I'd be doing reels, I'd be live streaming. I'm thinking about doing all of these things. So I think
but you're aware of them, though.
I'm aware of them. Yeah, I'm very aware of them. And I think one of the key things is it's important to know about all of these like new things, and like you said, have your finger on the pulse. But then on the flip side of that, it's also equally important to know what your strengths are, what your priorities are, and like stay true to that, and like experiment. Obviously there's nothing wrong with experimentation, but don't feel like, and this is me giving a pep talk to myself essentially, don't feel like you're necessarily like shooting yourself in the foot or being left behind if you don't commit to any of those things, because you know your audience best. And so like it's basically just about what is going to strengthen your content, what is going to strengthen your message, what's going to strengthen your audience and your community, whilst being in line with like your values, your time schedule, your bandwidth, your your skills, your team skills, all of that. And really
thank you
doing that. Yeah, no worries.
All right.
Hey, so I teach music composition lessons, and I have a lot of students who want to like write for a 100-piece orchestra before they can even like write a melody. And so I'm wondering, based on your house sessions and these office hours, like what are the things as a cohort we're spending, what are we worried about that we maybe should be spending less time on, I guess?
Good question. Especially in the first week, I remember hearing a lot of people in the house sessions not knowing what to name their channel and what to be called. That doesn't matter. Like, especially like now, the way that YouTube works, you can't even pick a custom username. It's just going to be a series of letters and numbers until you hit a certain number of subscribers. By the time you hit the threshold to pick a custom username, like cross that bridge when you get to it. And the name that appears under videos, you can change that. You can change that in an instant. You do not need to be spending time worrying about that. Yeah, That's one thing. And then I think all of it is about the things that I think that you don't necessarily need to be spending lots of time on. And these are things that will just like naturally evolve over time, is that kind of like the name, the branding, all of the packaging. You like just make the videos, like make good content. And all of that other stuff will just kind of like, it'll happen. It'll happen. But the main thing to focus on is the videos.
Like I find myself kind of like redoing titles and thumbnails on old videos to try to like rescue them, but I should probably just be making new videos instead, I think.
Yeah. Honestly, like after the first 24 hours of a video going out, that video is dead to me. Right. Which sounds so bad, but I'm more talking about the comments section. But generally, like, I'm just like, right, next. Okay. Like, those, like, the only reason why you should ever be looking back at your back catalog of videos is either one, if you suddenly see that an older video is suddenly like spiking and like loads of people are finding it and you're like, what's going on here? In that case, go to that video, change the links in the top of the description, add some cards at the beginning that point to newer videos, make sure your end screen is pointing to newer videos. That's all you need to do. Just go in there and do that. And then if you suddenly see a video that has been like, you know, over the months, years, whatever, it's just been like, you know, it did its thing first week, and then it's just been like doing this, and then suddenly you see it just, then you might be wanting to be like, okay, what's going on here? But those are that's it. I don't even go in and look for the ones that are doing that, because I don't care. But and also because you have to hunt for them in analytics to find those. Whereas the ones that are suddenly like, oh, this old video is suddenly doing well, that might appear in like your like, oh, top 10 videos from the last 30 days, and you're like, that one, okay. Yeah,
that's helpful. Thanks.
No worries.
Cool. Michaela.
Hi.
Hey.
I've like a two-part question, sort of. One is more curiosity around your channel. I'm curious if, let's say, money were no object, or you were given loads of money to work on a new project or hire someone new. I'm curious how you think about that for your channel. Is there something that you like, a next goal that you want to be reaching that would be helpful if you have more capital of sorts, and how do you think about that?
Yeah, so if you were asking me on a bad week, I'd be like, if I just came into loads of money, I'd just quit. I'd be like, I'm out. But let's not let that deter you all. I have been here for 10 years, and has, like, lots of people who have had careers for 10 years have dreams of doing other stuff. But it's quite fun because I feel like every few years the job changes anyway. So it's like doing something new. I would basically love to hire like a creative producer, like someone who can actually like be in here with me, so I'm not filming by myself or recording podcasts by myself. So someone who can like be there with me to help it look good, and actually kind of be like, oh, maybe say that again, that was a bit weird, or like and things like that. A research assistant, specifically around like sex and relationships. Oh yeah, just like if it's like if it's a money thing, it's always around hiring people, like equipment and stuff. Like, meh, it's the people, I think, that add more value.
Yeah, so hiring people.
They're also more expensive.
Oh, yeah, makes sense. Awesome. And then second question is, you kind of alluded to it, and wanting to try like Instagram Reels or other types of channels. I'm curious, as your channel grows, and also feeling the need to keep up with all these other platforms, to also then grow your channel even more. How do you keep up with it? I think even I don't have many subscribers, but even trying to keep up with Reels and TikTok and all the trends and all these different channels to grow, it already gets overwhelming. Are there any tools or ways that you think about that, especially if you're thinking about like better engaging with your fans?
I honestly feel like I'm bad at keeping up with it. And sometimes like that's fine, and I have to just like accept that because it's like, okay, I can try these other things, but that means I won't have time to do all these other things. And so it's kind of about like, okay, what would I have to sacrifice in order to pursue these new things? But maybe what I really need is just to kick myself up the ass and just be like, Hannah, just like try these things, you know? It's a tricky one. I find for like the way that I work and with my like personality and the way that my brain works and stuff is I can't just wait for a day where I'm like, I feel like making a short or I feel like live streaming, because I don't ever feel like doing those things. So it has to be something that I really intentionally go, oh, okay, let's have an entire day where I like plan ideas for shorts or like plan ideas for live streams. And so essentially what it is even though the reason why I haven't done that yet is because clearly I've not seen that as a priority just yet. And maybe it will happen one day. But for now, like when I'm like going through my to-do list and like adding things in my calendar, it's always the thing that gets pushed because everything else feels more urgent. But that's a whole other thing that we can unpack, because I'm sure like some of you are familiar with like the Eisenhower matrix of like tasks that are urgent and important and urgent, not important, blah, 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 blah. But our capitalist society basically makes us think that things that are urgent are more important than important things. Like we place urgency above importance. And I see myself doing it all the time, because I think that doing things like experimenting with shorts and experimenting with live streams, I would put that in like the important category. Like it's non-urgent and it's important, because it, even if it doesn't go anywhere, it's still like flexing those creative muscles and like just seeing what happens. But basically everything that is just urgent just gets in the way of being able to pursue those things. Thanks for coming to my therapy session, everyone. Do we eat the rich for graduation? Oh my God, yes, Zach. Sounds great. Did that help? Isn't that?
Okay. Yeah, thanks for answering.
Oh, cheers, Michaela. Bernard, sorry.
Yeah, hi Hannah. You can hear me guys, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So I was wondering, is there some kind of content format, some kind of medium like holistical or opinion or whatever that you kind of fall back to, something that is like an 80-20, it's easy for you, it does the job and still has some output? So what's like this thing when you have a bad day that you kind of fall back to?
Great idea / question. So I think one for me is basically, when it comes to like sex and relationships, there's always way more questions than answers. And so much of it comes down to like the way that people personally perceive and experience in the world and themselves. And so I love just posing whatever questions I have to my followers. And then I'll like anonymize the responses. Like you say, it's like the Instagram story question sticker. I'll either use that for a Q&A, like they'll ask questions, or I'll ask the question and it will be people responding. And then the video is basically me. It's just user generated content. It's just like, I'm going, oh, this is what other people think. That's the most simple way of doing it. I do love user generated content that's a bit more effort to make. Like I've done ones where people like submit video and audio clips. So obviously that's a lot more work. But I also did one recently where I asked people, it was for a video that was about what is sex, like literally like let's try and define what sex is. And I did like through Mentimeter and like did like this word cloud, and I put it out on my Instagram, and there was like over 800 responses. And so it was like this word cloud of like over 800 people's words of what is sex. And so that was like a really cool thing that was very easy to do, and it just like elevated the video. It just like adds this extra like seasoning.
Wow, I really like it. Question to the first answer. So would you say it's some sort of Q&A, or is it more like it is a question, but you like put in the effort and create a video around it? So what?
Yeah. Q&As are always like the easiest ones. Actually, I did one. So one that I filmed this week, which was like a last minute video because the video I originally planned wasn't ready to shoot yet. And I'd recently bought a bunch of books and I wasn't planning on doing a book haul video, but I was like, great, book haul. Nice and easy. And it means that I don't have to do any research for it, because the value is in the book recommendations and just being able to talk about why I purchased that book. I don't have to have read it. I'm just like, this is what I've heard about it and this is why I bought it. Yeah.
Great. Thank you very much.
Cool. Right. I think we shall bring it to an end there. Just 5 minutes to the top of the hour because we've got a workshop with David Perel straight after this. So thanks very much, Hannah, for joining.
Thanks for your questions.
Any last bits of advice for everyone before this is the last time people?
Just have fun. Figure out what is stopping you. What is the story that you are telling yourself? What is the narrative that you're telling yourself that is the reason why you can't make that video today, or the reason why you've not scripted that video yet? What is that story that you're always telling yourself? And unpack that and maybe challenge that story.
Cool. Good advice. Cool. Thanks everyone for joining. Thanks Hannah for coming along, and yeah, see you later guys.
Thanks everyone. Bye.